Well, hey everyone. Welcome to a special episode of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen with your host, Matt Payne. This week marks our 400th episode and has been tradition with every centennial episode. I decided to do something a bit different, which certainly required a lot more effort to pull off than usual. This week, I sat down with three of the most prominent landscape photographers on the YouTube platform, Adam Gibbs, Ben Horne, and Nick Carver. These three exemplify an approach to YouTube that I personally think works well without sacrificing one's ethics. We discuss their approaches to making content for the platform and how it intersects with their business models, plus a lot more. Before we get rolling, I want to mention this week's sponsor, Elements Magazine. If you're looking to take your photography to the next level, you need to check out Elements Photography Magazine. It's not just any magazine, it's packed with inspiration, education, and a supportive community that can be found on their Facebook group. Each issue showcases breathtaking photography from amazing talent around the globe, including many former guests of this podcast. You'll find tips and techniques from the best in the business, dive into detailed tutorials, and stay on top of the latest industry trends. Most importantly, Elements shines a spotlight on diverse voices, giving underrepresented photographers a platform to share their unique perspectives. It's all about creativity and helping you discover your own artistic voice. Whether you're a pro or just starting out, Elements Photography Magazine has something for you. Subscribe today and unlock a world of photography like never before. Head to elementsphotomag.com and join the awesome community of creators. Plus, use the code FSTOP15 for 15% off your subscription. I hope to see you there. Okay, let's get to this week's panel discussion with Adam Gibbs, Ben Horne, and Nick Carver. All right, welcome to the 400th episode of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen. And I'm joined today by three incredible guests who have all been on the podcast before and have all found resounding success on the YouTube platform, however you want to define that, which is something we'll talk about later. We've got Adam Gibbs, Ben Horne, and Nick Carver, three of my favorite photographers in the landscape photography space, and three of my favorite content creators on YouTube. First, we'll just have each of you introduce yourselves, and we'll start off with you, Adam.
Adam Gibbs. I live on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. I am originally from the UK, but I've lived in Canada since 1979, and I've been a photographer for a long time, since 1991 professionally. So, yeah, too long.
Just a minute.
Yeah, my name is Ben Horne. I guess I gotta say last name too. I live in San Diego, California, born and raised here. Been doing photography since high school, I guess, really. But got a little bit more serious about it in 2007, 2008, and been doing things professionally since 2020, since the start of the pandemic. But I had been sort of gearing up to it for quite a while before then. And then I'm one of those strange people that shoots film. So, it happens. It happens to some of us, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And you have a cool podcast you do with Cody Schultz called Creative Banter, which is also a good show.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that.
You bet.
Well, I am Nick Carver. I'm in Orange County, California, so just a little bit north of Bend there. I'm a YouTubing, film-ish photographer guy, but also a working photographer, so I do architectural photography as kind of my day job, and then YouTube stuff is my other day job, I guess. And I have the AC turned off right now because the sound is insane, so you're just going to watch me slowly develop beads of sweat throughout the podcast.
Slowly melt.
Slowly melting away in the August California heat.
Yeah.
I feel that I had to do the same thing, and it's already like 90 degrees in my office. So
yeah. At least it's early.
Yeah, we don't have air conditioning, and notice I've got a sweater on.
How dare you rub it in?
Yeah. We'll see how things are in January. Yeah.
Well, like I said before, the three of you are three of my favorite YouTube photographers. I don't know why you're called YouTube photographers, but you just happen to be photographers who also have a presence on YouTube. I guess that's a way of saying that. So let's just kick that off, maybe starting with you, Adam. What share of your attention as a professional photographer goes into creating content for YouTube, maybe from a percentage perspective?
Well, 100%. I mean, most of the reason why my business is basically revolves around YouTube, because that's where all my clients come from. So I used to sell images, the rights to images. I worked in editorial for many, many years, 20 odd years, and the editorial market is pretty much non-existent now. So I had to reinvent myself and try and figure out, well, how can I still make money at a profession that traditionally doesn't make very much money? So that's when I started YouTube. And you know, the good thing about YouTube for me is that it keeps me motivated, because I am a bit lazy. So it does help me to go outside, and because I feel like I have to make content, so that's how I get outside. So yeah, a huge proportion of my revenue comes indirectly and directly from YouTube.
Well, as far as the creation of stuff for YouTube, I'd say actually very low percentage. I mean, it accounts, without YouTube, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing for a living. But as far as the effort and time and all that sort of stuff, not a lot, honestly. But I think it's because of the way I do things, where I'll go on like 3, maybe 4 trips a year, and I'll record video while I'm on the trip. And on the trip, the video doesn't really amount to doing very much. You know, it's just recording some clips here and there. As I'm taking a photo, I'll have a video camera rolling in the background. But it's actually not a big part of what I do in the field. And I think it's because my way of doing the video stuff is just kind of like, it's like a fly in the wall just looking at me working. It's not really, I'm not really doing a lot of stuff in the field differently than I'd be doing otherwise. And then once I get home from the trip, yeah, there's time that it takes to put the videos together. But honestly, I've got things set up in a way where it doesn't take too long. I mean, video editing takes time, but everything falls into place fairly quickly. And I enjoy that process of everything coming together in the form of the video and creating something that mimics the feeling I had in the field. But then when I'm done with that, then I go months and months and months at a time without doing anything for YouTube. So it really is a small portion of what I do, but it's because of the way I have the trip set up. So that's, but as kind of as Adam was saying, you know, without YouTube, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing for a living. But it's definitely a different approach as far as trips, as opposed to more continuous, which is what YouTube likes.
Right. And we'll dive more into that later as well. What about for you, Nick?
Yeah, I think I need to take a YouTube course from Ben or something, because I feel like it sounds nice.
I'll show you how to not make money on YouTube. Yeah.
I think I might be able to co-headline that course. Yeah, I would say like actual thought, how much YouTube takes up my thinking is probably like a third of what my kind of day-to-day is. But I'd say it's probably well over 50% of the frustration. Because, like, you know, I have the architectural photography side of my business. I have the online courses side of my business. I have other things that take my attention. And so that's why YouTube is maybe only like a third of it. But it feels like a monster that I can't give enough food to. Mm-hmm. And I just, I got really frustrated with this like last week, actually, because I put out a video where I went to Yosemite. It was a lot of work, put a lot of time into editing. I was really proud of it, and like it did really well. So everything about it was great. I had no reason to be upset or sad or anything. But then like the next day I was already like, what's the next thing gonna be then? Like, how am I gonna make a video that's as good as that one, that people like as much as that one? And I gotta start planning. And I really don't like that part of it. It's just this kind of bottomless pit that just wants more and more and more and more. And, you know, I'm not complaining. YouTube has brought me more than I could possibly imagine in my career. But it gets a little exhausting because it just tends to reward frequency more than anything else. And I do not do well with frequency because I'm very slow at everything. So the frustration, it takes up a lot of my mental energy, but the actual time I'm putting into YouTube, I would say is quite a bit lower.
Yeah, and I think that kind of stems me to ask a follow-up question for each of you, because I think all three of you have slightly different kind of models of content creation on the platform. I think about Adam, you're kind of more of what I would call what people kind of expect, more traditional. Like you have fairly regular content that comes out that's kind of broadly on different subjects. I mean, you have vlogging, but then you also have like discussions about gear and techniques and things like that. Whereas Ben, yours is much more kind of esoteric and like, these are my trips and this is the philosophical side of my approach to photography. And you might release 3 videos in a row, but then go weeks without releasing anything. And then Nick, you're kind of in between the two, I would say. So maybe talk a little bit about kind of your approaches to creating content for YouTube. And
yeah, well, when I first started, I wanted to go all in, and the drones and the sliders and all that stuff, and people really enjoyed it. But the problem was, well, first of all, it's just way too much to carry in the field, and also it took a huge amount of effort. And the photography was suffering because of that. I'm a photographer. I'm not a videographer. I really enjoy the photography side of it. The video is just kind of a side hustle, So I really backed off on the video side of things. And my YouTube channel has suffered a bit because of that. Basically, I just go out kind of like Ben in some ways, and it's just me talking aloud my thought process, and some people really like it and some people don't like it. It's not terribly deep. I don't go into philosophy or my feelings in nature, because a lot of the time I don't have those feelings. I just go out there and I just enjoy photography, so I'm just sharing my experiences as a photographer. The gear reviews, I'm not very good at them. I usually have to script them. If it's like I did one for Hasselblad. I really love Hasselblad cameras, so I scripted the whole thing. It was a bit more formal. But I much prefer just going out there and just talking about composition and light. Those are the things that I really enjoy. The gear side of things is not my shtick. I'm not terribly interested in the gear, and I don't think I really know that much about gear. I mean, if someone asked me about how the menu system of my camera that I'm using now, the GFX, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I just turn it on and as long as I know how to use the f-stops and the shutter speeds and the ISOs. So I'm pretty useless when it comes to explaining to people all the nuances of the gear side of things. So it is what it is, I just go out there and do my thing, and a lot of my videos get a bit samey after a while, because I think the problem with photography is like any subject, there's only so much you can talk about with photography. And if you really want to improve as a photographer, the only way to improve is actually going out and taking photographs. Stop watching my freaking videos and go out and take,
oh my God, I'm so glad somebody finally said that.
Yeah, I mean, just stop watching my videos. Just go outside and start taking photographs, I mean, I like people to watch my videos, but anyway.
What about you, Ben?
Well, I come from the perspective of having worked at a camera store for like 16 years before doing the photography stuff. And I don't enjoy gear talk. I don't enjoy some of that stuff. For me, photography is a bit of an escape where I can just kind of go do my own thing, which is one of the reasons why I really don't talk about technical stuff. I don't like talking about gear. There's people that are far better at that than, I can leave that up to them. And
make sure you know that as well.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh yeah. They'll let you know. Yeah. And as Adam was saying, I think when people think of YouTube, like the drone shots, the sliders, all that kind of stuff, the slick video stuff. I mean, that's good and all, but it's also a lot of stuff, as Adam was saying, to carry around. The main thing is story. I think story is what keeps people coming back year after year after year. And because if it's easy to create a YouTube channel where people talk about more beginner topics, because that is going to attract a lot of attention. It gets people searching for stuff, discovering you. But that's also not necessarily the audience that's going to stick with you over time. And so for me, it's all about story. And I learned that early on when doing this, because that's something that you don't burn out with, because it's, otherwise it is kind of a lot of the same thing over and over and over again. There's only so many tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it's all been about story. It's been about consistency. And last year, I started just keeping a written journal in the field. And then now when I do the videos, I'll actually take from that written journal and read almost word for word and use that for some of the narration in the videos. Because when I'm in the field, I don't really know what my thoughts are necessarily. I'm just kind of living the experience. I don't really know what's going on. I'm just like, oh, that's something pretty. I'll take a picture of that. But I found that by writing my thoughts down and then drawing from that when producing the videos, it can create something that's a bit more, has a bit more depth to it than otherwise. So I found that has been a good thing for me, just to focus on the story aspect of things. But I think that's been my thing, not as much the gear thing, not worrying about putting out a video every week, because that'll just burn out people. I've seen so many people come and go just because of that alone. But just focusing on the story, and it's really fun to see the same faces, commenting and stuff ever since I started. The first videos I did were absolutely horrendous. They're horrible. They're still up there for people to watch them. Back in 2009, a little point and shoot camera. But yeah, I see some of the same people commenting and stuff since then. It's kind of fun. So I think consistency is key and story is key.
And for you, Nick?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I've been doing YouTube pretty long time, not quite as long as Ben. I think no one's been doing it as long as Ben. But I've been doing it about 11 years. So like when I started doing it, the concept of like being a YouTuber wasn't even really a thing, at least not in the photography community in any sense. So I guess I kind of had a luxury of going into it without that preconceived idea of what a YouTuber is and what YouTube videos are supposed to be. So I didn't necessarily follow any template on like, yeah, you do a gear review today and then next week you talk about shutter speeds and all that kind of stuff. Like I was kind of just testing the waters on YouTube as two things. One, just something to do when you're out taking pictures and camping and kind of sharing the process, which that was a direct inspiration from Ben, obviously, doing the on-location stuff. But also, I've been teaching photography for a very long time. And so when I started YouTube, I was kind of viewing it as a marketing tool to get students to workshops and classes and things like that. And that actually created a weird dilemma in the beginning because I wasn't teaching analog photography. The analog renaissance hadn't really happened yet. It hadn't really started. So no one was interested in film photography that much. So I really needed to do videos about digital photography and digital techniques and tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff if I wanted to get students. But I really didn't want to do those videos because I wasn't particularly passionate about it. I'm not passionate about gear or the latest camera. I am passionate about film gear. I can talk your ear off for that. But the newest digital camera, I had no desire to talk about it or review it or anything like that. And I didn't really want to do like tips and tricks. Around that time, there was a lot of like 10 hacks to be a better photographer and stuff and like just, I don't know, man, put a gun to my head. I don't want to do anything like that. So I had this kind of dilemma of, it seems like this is what would be best for growing my teaching business, but I have no desire to do that. So my earlier videos, there's this kind of weird mix of like, what is a full frame camera video? And then like a video of me going out with a 6x17 camera and taking pictures. And it's like, what are you? What are you talking about? So it took me a while to get to where I am now, but I think especially with each passing year, I'm kind of more in the camp of, I just want to kind of make entertainment at this point that's evergreen, like something that's not going to be dated next year because I was obsessing about the max ISO on the latest Sony and all this. Like I don't want to make anything that someone comes to my
Oh,
channel and
Did
they're
somebody invite Tony Northrup to this chat? Oh, no, just kidding.
like, see, now those guys are laughing all the way to the bank, and good for
Yes.
them. But you know, I just maybe it's because I started YouTube before it was a real thing. But as I watched, and I don't mean that as bragging, I'm just saying there wasn't any template to follow. But as I watched the templates kind of emerge, they became so grotesque to me and kind of disgusting, and like especially like the Mr. Beast variety of YouTubing that's just very, I don't even know how to describe it, but I just have no desire to do any of that. So I feel like I'm kind of verging even further away from that, where I'm trying to make almost short films every time I put out a video, and that unfortunately slows the process down immensely, because it takes a long time. It takes a long time to edit. It takes a long time to come up with the idea even, and then there's not the new thing to review, or there's not the new latest technology to talk about. So you kind of have to dig a little deeper on telling a good story, like Ben was talking about. I think it does really hinge on story.
Yeah, and I know Nick and Ben as well. Like, you guys struggle. I don't know if struggle is the right word, but like you're similar to me in that like I don't talk a lot about things that are easily monetizable. Like I'm not like promoting different cameras and talking about the latest and greatest editing software or whatever that's like affiliate link central. And therefore, like when you're putting a lot of your time and effort into something and having the need to put food on the table for your family, it becomes like this challenging dilemma of trying to figure out what makes sense in terms of how much time to spend on something. And I know, Nick, you recently did a whole video talking about how you're doing these longer form videos for people who want to pay for them, or like your biggest fans. And I think, you know, those are the kind of weird decisions we have to make if we're not like all in on that Mr. Beast, Tony Northrup model of creating content.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all have thoughts on that, but
Well, I mean, there's definitely an audience for those types of videos. Unfortunately, that's just my character just won't allow me to do videos like that where everything's high energy and it's like you're on Red Bull all the time. It's just not me. So it'd be really hard for me to fake it. And I've seen people fake their kind of, you know, their emotions and that, and they just don't last very long. So you have to be yourself. And unfortunately, you know, as far as characters go, you know, I'm not a strong character. I'm pretty laid back. I mean, for a while there, I was doing the comedy stuff with Gavin Hardcastle, and some people really loved it and some people hated it. But it was just kind of a fun thing to do. You know, for me to interject that into my videos now, it just wouldn't work, because you need to play that with, you know, against other people. So I'm just myself, you know. I don't know how some of these people can keep that high energy up, you know. I'm not covered in tattoos. I don't have piercings all over the place, you know. Like I said, I'll be 60 this year, so I don't think it'll work for me.
it's not too late, Adam. We can help you with the tattoos.
And I think, I mean, most of my audience, you know, they're my age or older, so. And I've noticed actually my numbers have started to go down, so I'm wondering if my audience are actually dying.
I had a similar thought about my channel.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know, I think you just have to be yourself. And I know that Ben and Nick are definitely just themselves. I'm sure if I met them in person tomorrow, they'd be the same guy that I see on YouTube.
Well, the sensationalized content, especially the more like short form type stuff, that will definitely get attention. The clickbait, all that sort of stuff, it gets attention, but at the same time, it's not good attention. That's a lesson that I learned fairly early on. And the whole thing about like the negative YouTube comments and that sort of stuff, yeah, that does make a big difference. If you put your heart and soul into something and then people would just start like ripping on you, yeah, it's not really a good. It's hard to ignore that. And I found that with any of the clickbait sort of stuff, it really does attract the wrong sort of crowd that just makes it not even worthwhile. And that's actually one of the reasons why I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, I decided just to shut off the ads just to try and fly under the radar a little bit more. I get almost no negative comments now, which is kind of nice for one's own like mental health, you know, when it comes to like making it something that's actually enjoyable to do. And so shutting off the ads, and I intentionally do as far from clickbait as possible. I make the most boring titles for my videos because it attracts a good crowd as opposed to the wrong sort of crowd. At some point, it might just make them just random numbers for the titles of the videos, and just to skirt the algorithm altogether. Because for me, the algorithm is more of just like this hamster wheel. You have to keep feeding it over and over and over again. And just as like Nick was saying, you know, you have a something you put out there, you put a lot of work into, and then immediately it's the what next. You know, you continuously have to do that, and it's been nice to jump off that wheel and just do things that I want to do, which I see as the thing between Adam, Nick, and myself with the YouTube stuff is that we're just doing probably what we'd be doing anyways. It's not doing things for the sake of YouTube, for the sake of the algorithm. It's also why we're not going to be like, you know, driving around, you know, $300,000 cars into our multi-million-dollar mansions. But I'm fine with that, just as long as I can feed the cats. You know, I'm good with that. So I see that as a similarity between all of us, just doing what we actually want to do, as opposed to doing something for the algorithm.
Ben's got to make that fancy feast money.
I do.
Ben's got to eat.
Delicious.
We're not
Yes.
sponsored by Fancy Feast, by the way.
It's one of the only sponsors I would take. Would be great. That or like mane and tail.
Do you have cats as well, Nick?
No, I used to. I grew up with cats. I have a dog now. But
We have three. We have three of them. So I
Three
guess
cats?
I'm not a cat lady. I'm a cat guy.
I was a cat guy
got you
growing
beat.
up.
I got you beat, Adam. I have 4 cats.
Oh wow!
I got you all beat. I had 5 growing up at one
Oh.
point.
Wow.
Oh,
Found 2 of them in a parking lot. They were the best 2 cats ever. Anyway,
Yeah.
I digress. I constantly feel that tug of war in my brain of like what needs to be done in terms of a business and what needs to be done in terms of my personal integrity and my personal enjoyment of YouTubing. Because, you know, if I'm using YouTube to try and drive customers to my website or my courses or my prints or whatever it is, there is kind of a fiscal duty as a business owner to make YouTube videos and get people looking at them, get eyeballs on them and all that kind of stuff. And so I can feel that temptation sometimes of like, oh, do that video because that'll demonstrate your ability as a teacher in this realm, and then people will find you and like maybe give it a title where people who haven't found you yet are going to click on it. And I can feel that side of me pulling, and just my intrinsic personality, because I've always been this way. As soon as I feel that, like, this is what everybody wants from you, there's a stronger side of me that pulls the other way. I'm like, F that. If that's what they want from you, then don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
that part starts coming in, and that usually wins. Sometimes it doesn't. I've put out videos where I look back and I'm like, dude, you did that trying to get clicks. That's embarrassing. But for the most part, the other side of me wins, and I'm like, you know what? I'd be able to sleep much better at night if I put out a video that I'm truly proud of. It talks about something that I think is important, and you know, I'm not going to feel cringy about it later on. And you know, in terms of like the actual revenue, you know, nuts and bolts of things, it's true that the algorithm wants frequency. But I think what a lot of people who don't YouTube don't realize is YouTube doesn't pay you shit. Like, very, very little directly from YouTube. Like, I have a video right now that has like 70,000 views, which is pretty good in this community. I just looked at the revenue on it. It's like $293 from ad revenue. It's like, that doesn't even cover the gas, film, and processing, let alone my time I put into it to make that video. So the actual direct revenue from YouTube is very little, unless you
peanuts.
have millions. Yeah, it's peanuts. And so this is why, you know, so many people have to resort to this video sponsored by Squarespace. And I get why everyone has to do that, because YouTube just will not keep you afloat. So I try to always keep that in mind of like, look, don't give YouTube what it wants because it's not even paying you. Like, give the viewers what they want. And from what I've seen from emails and comments, I don't read the comments, but what little I have seen, it seems people, the dedicated people, the people that are actually going to pay you for something, want less frequency but higher quality. Like, they're burned out by the Mr. Beasts of the world. They don't want constant feed. They want quality feed. And then they'll be much more dedicated to you. So I try and keep in mind I got to give the viewers what they want and what I want, which happens to be the same thing, not what YouTube wants.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Not to make, I don't mean this to be political at all, but I listened to this podcast where this woman, she basically watches like C-SPAN 24/7, and she analyzes all of the hearings and things like that. And she recently went to the Republican National Convention, and she was getting interviewed by a bunch of kind of right-wing YouTubers for their channel. And like before they would do the interviews, like they would have these super pleasant, friendly exchanges, and they were normal people and super happy. And as soon as the recording started, like they jumped into these really weird attacking phrases, and like it was all sensationalized. And then the recording stopped, and they were back to their normal selves. And she asked them about that. She's like, "Oh yeah, we don't actually believe any of that stuff. We just have to do it so that we can get people riled up for the algorithm, and we actually want like negative comments because that helps tell YouTube that to show it to more and more people." And I think there's probably a lot of that going on in photography as well. Like people are doing and saying things that isn't really true to who they are as a person in order to get more views, clicks, and whatnot. So I'm with the three of you guys. I personally couldn't do that because that just doesn't feel like a normal human being thing to do. But
Yeah.
I
I think it is pretty prevalent in our space.
Yeah, especially.
I don't know about landscape photography though, nature photography. I mean, such a small niche. I'm not sure if that would be true.
I meant photography, not.
Oh yeah, it's photography general. Maybe yeah.
That's why we're the ones on the podcast and not the other ones. We're the niche guys that are doing it right.
Yeah. I mean, so kind of to my point, there have been a lot of changes to the algorithm and YouTube since each of you have started on the platform, and I'd be curious. From what I understand, I'd be curious to hear how each of your approaches have changed, if at all, or if you've doubled down. I know we've talked a little bit about that, but Adam, maybe we'll start with you and talk about if your approaches have changed at all based on what you're seeing works or doesn't work.
No, I'm still just the same boring guy. Just doing the same old stuff.
Okay, next, Ben. How about you?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't know anything about the algorithm. I don't care about the algorithm. It's nothing I do has any impact on that. I think, one of the things that I've learned is that one of the most important things for YouTube is really word of mouth. And that's completely just skirting the algorithm altogether. I attribute getting to where I am right now based mostly on word of mouth. Mostly when I was more so getting into it. My channel doesn't grow anymore. It's just kind of like sits on this lovely little plateau. And I'm perfectly fine with it because, I can feed my cats, all two of them, not five, all two of my cats. I think word of mouth is important. The long game is important, and I think none of that really hinges upon the algorithm. So, yeah, I'm definitely no expert on it. I don't even know what it's doing these days. I hope it's doing well. So I don't know what Nick's thoughts are on that.
I wish it the best. Yeah, the algorithm's funny because it's like this mystery box that we're all trying to figure out, and there's so many people online that claim they have it figured out. Like I just sometimes I get caught up in like, okay, how can I just maximize this video, like best time to post, thumbnail, stuff like that. So I started Googling like, when's the best time to post a video? literally every single day at every single time was heralded as this is the perfect time to do it. Just depending on what website you went to and what, study they were referring to. So people think there's like some rhyme or reason to it. I don't know that there's much rhyme or reason to the algorithm. We hoist it up as like this magical thing that's calculating so much stuff. I honestly think half the time the algorithm just looks at me and is like, that's a 30-something white guy. Feed him this video. Like, it's no more complex than that, because I have it suggesting videos to me for months that I'm not clicking on. And then, like, I look up one video on how to fix a plumbing thing. And, like...
the inundated.
Yeah, here's 50 other videos on the exact same topic.
Yeah.
You must love this. So, I think trying to figure out the algorithm is a fool's errand. And even... So... The running ads or not, and this is something I actually asked Ben about recently, because I was asking him, do you think not running ads makes YouTube penalize your videos? Of course, no one knows the answer, but the latest video I posted, I turned ads off, and it was the first video I've really done that for, and it's my highest performing video of the past 10. So by a long shot, like, it's double what the second one is. So, people will swear up and down online, yeah, if you turn off monetization, YouTube doesn't like that because they want to make money off your videos. I don't know. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. Are they really going to penalize your one video for not having ads on it? And this experiment at least proves that what everyone is saying online isn't true, not in this instance. So the algorithm, I don't know that anyone's going to figure out the algorithm.
Yeah, and I know there's like science behind, or at least I've been told there's like science behind like thumbnails and how to craft the thumbnail and where do you put things in the thumbnail and like how do you title your videos and things like that. And I put some thinking into both of those things for a while, and at the end of the day I decided like I could probably spend my time much better on other things.
Yeah agreed.
I think people get caught up in trying to emulate what they think other people are doing that they think is successful. And at the end of the day, I think it's important that we each have our own definition of what success means, and it's not always views.
Yeah.
I try to have fun with it a bit. I'll put goofy thumbnails up and put some kind of clickbait thing, like one video I put my photography is crap, and people were complaining about it. So the next video I put my photography is awesome. Just to piss people off. I mean,
nice.
You gotta have fun with it, And trying to predict which videos are going to do great and which I gave up a long time ago. Because sometimes I put tons of effort into a video and it doesn't go anywhere, and then you'll put up some video where you haven't put any effort into it, and it'll just do way better than the last one, and you kind of just throw your arms up in the air and say, why bother?
Yeah, I'm always surprised at the videos that I put out, why those ones do better and other ones don't do well, and I honestly have never been able to figure it out, so I'm just kind of done trying if I'm going to be completely honest. Yeah Well, maybe on a more positive note, and maybe we'll start with you, Ben, since you've been doing this the longest. What do you see as the biggest rewards of running a YouTube channel?
I think the main thing is just being able to do my own thing, really. One of the things that I told myself early on with this is if I were ever able to make a career out of photography, I don't want it to become work. And I think if you make some good choices with all this stuff, you can do something that you truly enjoy for a living and not have it become work, not have it become something that you resent. I think there's lots of decisions along the way in order to make that happen. And basically it's just saying no to things I just don't want to do. And then eventually the things I do want to do pay the bills enough to make it where it's, not that it takes no work to do this. It does take a lot of work, but it's work that I enjoy doing. So I think for me, that's been one of the big benefits of doing this, is to do it the way that I want to do it, as opposed to something that just becomes a burden, something that becomes this monumental task where you have to one-up yourself every single time around and everything. but just have the level of consistency and just make it something that's enjoyable and not have it become work. And so that, for me, that's the biggest thing about it all.
Yeah. What about for you, Nick?
The coolest things that have come out of YouTubing are kind of intangible sometimes. Just the simple fact of, it's easy to forget how much you want people to see your photos and how impossible it is to get people to see your photos. Like when you're starting out, like we're all doing this because we want to share photos with people, when you get right down to it. And when you're starting out or you don't have a YouTube channel, you don't have any reach, like no one sees your photos. You show it to your family members and cool. All right. But having a YouTube channel like this, I can put a picture out via the video, and I know it's going to be a bunch of people in Germany that see it. It's going to be a bunch of people in Australia that see it. It's going to be people all over the world that actually see the thing I made. And that's it's easy to take it for granted, but that's such a luxury as a photographer, because it's so hard to get your voice heard nowadays. There's so many people doing it that it's really hard to just get your work in front of people. So then you get emails from people saying how much, they like your photos, or they like this one particular photo or whatever, and it's like their signature has like a European, phone number, and it's got a German thing, or it's got a, whatever, and it's like, man, if I could go back 10 years to me and be like, yeah, there's going to be fans of, quote unquote fans, whatever you want to call them, there's going to be fans of yours in Germany and Australia and in the UK and all these places. It's like, how the hell am I going to get to that point? How am I going to get my work in front of those people? That sounds insane to me. So that it's such a great way to just reach people and kind of fulfill the ultimate goal of photography, at least for me, which is to share what I got in my head with other people. And then, of course, there's the more literal, tangible results that come from it. It can lead to jobs. It can lead to new clients. It leads to, I've had multiple new clients as a result of it. So just in a pure nuts and bolts business sense, there's a lot of good things that come out of it.
Yeah. And for you, Adam?
Well, like I said earlier, first and foremost, YouTube has been great in keeping me motivated. I do have trouble going out sometimes, not because I don't want to, it's just that I need a bit of a push, so the YouTube thing has kind of kept me going that way. I originally got into YouTube because the editorial market that I was working in just suddenly collapsed, and the magazine I was working for, they went bankrupt, so all of a sudden all my cash was coming from one source, and I was scrambling. So that's when I started up YouTube with the intent of getting clients for workshops. And at that time, I knew a lot of other photographers, but I didn't have a following outside of other photographers, and photographers aren't going to take your workshops. So YouTube was basically just to try and get more clients. And then I didn't realize at the time, but YouTube led to a whole bunch of other things that I wasn't even thinking about, like sponsorships and stuff like that. And it's been awesome. It's really helped me continue to do this for a living. And every day, really, I complain about it like any other job, but really, I don't have anything to complain about. I live pretty simply. I'm not too extravagant. I don't need a lot of money to survive or live. And YouTube has enabled me to do that, and also just go outside and take photographs and actually make money out of it while I do it. And like Nick said, it's great to see people enjoying my photography all around the world. I'm able to, like right now I have a new book coming out. Without the YouTube, I doubt that I would be able to do that, to sell my book. So yeah, I'm really lucky. I'm really fortunate. Even though we complain about YouTube, it's first world problems kind of thing. I think all YouTubers complain about the same things. It doesn't matter whether they're photographers. We all complain about the same things.
There isn't a job in the world I can't complain about. So
precisely. I used to teach rock climbing many years ago. That's what I did before I got into photography. And one of the problems that I came across was that because I was teaching it, it got really dull and boring really quickly because I was just doing the same routes, really easy stuff, and you just get tired of it. And I really didn't want to do the same thing with photography. So I had my editorial work, kind of like Nick with his architectural work, kind of the bread and butter. And then nature photography was something that I did as a sideline that I really enjoyed. And I really didn't want to do nature photography for a living, but I was kind of forced into it. But YouTube isn't really, I mean, it's nature. I'm out there taking photographs of nature, but it's a whole different thing, if that makes sense. It's video as opposed to trying to make a living out of selling images of nature. So it's worked out great that way as well.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely nothing to complain about. Everything's pretty good.
Yeah, way back in 2020, I kind of got inspired by Ben, actually. I was like, oh, I'm going to do some in the field videos, and it's going to be super fun. And I tried it, and I still record every once in a while. I'll do them, but I never do anything with the content. But what I've found through that experience is that it was really, really difficult for me and my personality to stay engaged as a photographer and like really enjoy the moment as a photographer and find interesting compositions and like fully give my attention to the creation of the image versus constantly thinking about the video side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious to hear you guys talk a little bit about how you kind of solve that problem in terms of trying to keep your attention on the photography while also creating content for the channel.
Well, I kind of mentioned it at the beginning here. I've tried to keep things really simple. I don't really tell a story like these guys in my videos. I don't do a lot of B-roll. Basically, it's just me. I go to an area. I try to keep it somewhat interesting by adding a few extra clips rather than just me talking for like a talking head for 30 minutes. That gets a bit boring. I just talk to the camera like I would be a buddy. And usually it helps if I have a friend with me. Like lately I've had my friend Brian come with me. So we're kind of interacting, and that helps. It's almost like sometimes your audience is there and they're eavesdropping on a conversation that you're having with your buddy, or they feel like they're standing there as a bunch of buddies just talking shop, and I think some people really enjoy that, just the shop talk and the joking around and just everyday stuff. It's almost like they're there and enjoying that kind of stuff. So I try to keep it light, don't get too serious about photography. After all, most people that are watching your channel are amateurs. They have no intent of becoming a professional. So why talk about making money and the problems with YouTube? And because I don't think they really want to hear that. They just want to see you out there taking images or your thought process, I think.
For me, the main thing when I'm out in the field is that photography always comes first. Video is always secondary. And if things are changing fast, if even working with the still camera is too much for me to handle, I'll just set aside the video altogether. I know that I can record some video after the fact. I can do some voiceover after the fact. I can do something to make it work. That's easy enough afterwards. And I think some of that's just because of the inherent nature of trying to work with transparency film and fast changing light conditions and all the technical stuff that goes along with that. So I know my limits in terms of when I should and should not be doing video. But I also know what I need in terms of being able to make a video work after the fact. And so I've gotten pretty good through the years in terms of making sure I have everything I need in the field, but also knowing what I can do after the fact to make it work. Even things like when I went on my Death Valley trip, when I was taking one photo in particular that ended up being one of my favorites for the year, I forgot to turn my microphone on. And so I have like this clip of me taking this photo, and there's no audio. So I'm like, all right, we'll just voice over that. We'll make that work. But photography always comes first for what I'm doing. And I think the other thing too is that you have to come up with a system that works well for you in terms of, like I said earlier, knowing what you need. But also it is amusing sometimes because there'll be comments sometimes where people say, your videos are all the same. You're doing the same thing over and over again. We want to see something different. I'm like, well, isn't that how people work.
Yeah,
You know, like if you're a photographer, the whole thing is like you kind of do the same thing over and over again. We are creatures of habit. So in some ways, if people see videos like that, it's like, yeah, because you're seeing the real thing. I'm not just trying to make up something on the fly to make it like, oh, I'm doing it this time, but I have like a Santa hat on. I don't know. Maybe I should do that. I don't know. But like, yeah. So for me, video always comes first. Yes, it gets repetitive, but that's because that's reality. That's me actually working in the field. And I know I can make up stuff after the fact to make things work with the voiceover and everything like that.
What you could have done, Ben, was when you didn't turn your microphone on, you could have dubbed in some Korean or something.
Just some badly dubbed stuff. Yes,
It's a whole new
that
audience.
could work. Just have some sound effects I'm doing where I'm clearly just like, clicking a pen to make the shutter click. All kinds of good stuff like that. Yeah.
Nice. What about for you, Nick?
I've found no correlation between like the quality of the photos or how I'm taking pictures, whether I'm doing a video or not. So it doesn't change the actual shooting process at all. The correlation I have found is if I'm making a video, it's much more stressful because I have that second layer of make sure you get yourself in focus on the video camera, make sure the white balance and exposure set correctly on the video camera. And it's a lot less relaxed. So I'm trying to do more going out and taking pictures without video just for the therapeutic aspects of it. And actually, I hate to even say rediscovering my love for taking pictures because it's never been lost, but just kind of reminding myself that, yeah, this is actually a relaxing experience most of the time. It doesn't have to be like, make sure you get the B-roll. Don't forget to get a shot close-up of you closing the shutter on the lens. Like the kind of checklist of B-roll and trying to... I'm kind of obsessive about making sure there's a storyline. So like I've even thrown out entire video shoots because I'm like, there's nothing here. It's just me going out and taking a picture that was okay. And that's not worthy of a video. And I'm definitely obsessive to it to a fault, I think, because I could put out a lot of stuff that people would enjoy. But I don't feel like it's like a short film worthy of Cannes Film Festival, so I'm not going to put it out. But the actual videoing side of it adds just a ton of stress to being out there because it's just a lot more to do. I'm pretty simple about it even. I don't do, slider shots. I don't do drone. I don't do any of that stuff. I basically just set up a camera and try and talk to the camera. But I also want to get all these extra shots to kind of fill out the edit. Yeah. And that ends up putting a lot on my plate sometimes. But I guess the good news is the pictures I haven't noticed them suffering at all. It's just, it's a hotter burn when I'm out there, I guess. Like I just feel like I'm kind of burning red hot the whole time. And the picture comes out in that chaos, but the video adds so much more complexity to it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And actually, as you were talking, another thing I was thinking of is simply having the video camera there and knowing that now you have some degree of accountability for what you're doing. You have these eyes on you, whereas before, if the video camera's not there, it's just you. It's just like me and that pretty little rock on the ground I'm trying to take a picture of. It's going to be legendary photo. But like as soon as there's a video camera, now suddenly you have to like explain yourself. You have to justify things. People are watching you, so there's pressure that comes with that.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes near the end of a trip, I'm like, I'm just going to leave the video camera behind. I'm going to do my own thing. It feels a little bit like in the days of going to school when you're like get out of school early, it's like a half day or something. It's like, all right, let's go have some fun or whatever. So there is an aspect of video that does have that sense of eyes on you, which can be a little bit of a negative thing.
Yeah.
On the flip side, though, I'd be curious if you feel like that's ever a positive in terms of like some accountability. Like use the word accountability, and I'm thinking, okay, so now I'm like pre-visualizing the comments like, oh, your composition is a little sloppy, or man, how come you didn't move 3 inches to your left, or like why did you choose f8 instead of f11, or things like that. And I'm curious if it's forced you to be a little bit more deliberate in your image creation process.
Well, not from a technical standpoint, but from a motivational standpoint of maybe it's a little bit, maybe it's either at the beginning of the trip or more towards the end of the trip, where at the beginning of a trip, I need to find that source of inspiration to get out there, and because it's a lot of work to get out there in the field. And then toward the end of the trip, when I'm starting to get like physically worn out, sometimes it takes something to get me out there. But knowing that I have the accountability of producing the video journals from the trip, sometimes having the video, knowing that I have to do the video stuff, encourages me to get out and to do something that otherwise I may have been like, I'll skip it. But instead I'm like, okay, I'll keep hiking up this canyon. I'll see what I can find. And that sometimes does lead to me finding other things in terms of having that sense of accountability.
Yeah, the accountability you're talking about of like the voices in the comments telling you like you could shoot it differently. I think that's about the worst possible thing that can be going through your brain when you're taking pictures personally.
Yeah.
I don't think any good art is made from, a group of people inserting their opinions, especially people that, for all we know, is a 13-year-old watching your video that doesn't know anything about photography. But there's no way to know that. So that accountability, if that ever starts to creep into my head, it just pisses me off and it makes me not want to do the video. But it's part of the reason I don't read the comments. The accountability of like, you better make something here. As long as it's not crushing, which it can be for me sometimes if it's something that I'm dependent on income-wise. Like I need this as a revenue stream, so it better go well. That can be a bit much. But yeah, it's probably good to have the accountability of, just the motivation to do it. I think a perfect trip, honestly, kind of like what Ben was talking about, is like if it was a week, the first day, no video. The last day or 2 days, no video. And it's just a policy when you go out. And then you have these days of work. And then you have these other days you're looking forward to, kind of the weekend of where you're not going to have to do that. I think that would probably strike a good balance.
I think for me, the video has actually helped me improve my compositions in a lot of ways. Because I noticed as soon as I started YouTube, I was starting to put a lot more thought, because I actually had to say something. Lately I haven't been I've been getting a bit too lazy, but for a lot of my videos, I would, I'd have to go over my thought process. So then I would start thinking, okay, so why am I doing it this way? And then my point of view might change a little bit as I go along in the video. Think, okay, well, maybe I should do this and move this over here and do this, because I'm just putting more thought into it because I have to explain it, right? As before, I would just point my camera at something and, oh, that looks kind of cool, and shoot it, and wouldn't put quite as much thought in. I do think that, and I think especially with Ben and Nick, probably in the same boat, is when you're using larger formats, especially with film, you do tend to slow down a lot and put a lot more thought into it. Because I used 4x5 for quite a few years, and I definitely improved my photography a huge amount. And I think the video has kind of continued that tradition for me. Now I don't shoot film or 4x5, but I definitely shoot in the same style with the cameras that I have now as I did with the larger format film cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still leave your camera out all night, Ben?
I haven't done that since 2017 when I destroyed 2 cameras. So I'll leave the tripod out now. I've done that.
Okay.
But back then I didn't have a tripod head with a quick release on it.
Okay.
Which made it very difficult. But now I can just leave my expensive tripod with my expensive Arca Swiss cube on top of it, so that now it can just get stolen easy because it's a lot lighter to carry carrying the whole camera away.
Yeah, so. No wonder you get tired by the end of your trip if you're carrying around an Arca Swiss cube.
I remember the first time I think you were in Death Valley and you left your camera out on a dune and it blew over at night. And I thought, what the hell are you thinking?
It seemed like a great idea at the time. It seemed like a really good idea when there was no wind.
Such a missed opportunity with the thumbnail. Could have had the
Oh,
camera
yes.
on the ground. I almost
Red
died.
arrow
and my
pointing to
camera
it.
did.
Almost.
But I have to do like the scream face with my hands on either side of my face going, ah!
Yeah. Lots of
That's
text
probably
on
going to be
the
a thumbnail for this video
too.
now. Yeah.
So I also wanted to ask you guys a question around perfectionism when it comes to creating YouTube content, because I find that you all have pretty polished videos, and Nick, you were describing some of the like all these things you're thinking about, like creating this storyline, and what I found when I've created videos in the past is like I get to a point where I'm like, could this be better? Yeah, but like, do I have the sanity to pull it off? No, so I'm just gonna put it out there and see what happens. So I'd be curious to hear you guys talk a little bit about kind of how you arrive at the conclusion that a video is good enough.
Yeah, for me, it used to be when I reached that point where I'm like, I'm so over this video, I'm done. I can't look at it anymore. And that's how I knew, like, oh, time to post. But I've tried to get more meticulous with my editing lately. I kind of decided a lot of my videos were a little not too slow paced necessarily, but just kind of a lot of unnecessary additional stuff in there, and I just kind of wanted to tighten things up a little bit. And then I kind of started having fun with sound design and kind of the audio editing part of it, mixing in sound effects and rumbles and music, old time music and stuff like that. And so I've gotten more nitpicky with that over the past few videos, and I've had several people email me like, there's a noticeable improvement in your videos and I really like it. And several people have pointed out specifically the sound is really cool and interesting. So if I wasn't getting that reaction, I might not be able to keep it up, but I'm kind of using that as a good indicator that, yeah, go ahead and be super meticulous with editing, and if it takes a lot longer, so be it. You'll have a video that's a little more interesting on the editing, a little more interesting on the flow. So I'm trying to give myself permission to take as long as I need to get the video how I want it, rather than I'm trying to post by Saturday because Google said Saturday mornings are the best time to shoot. I'm trying to move on from that because I think it stifles the creativity on the video editing side of it.
I think just as long as you're consistent with your days, you know. But you guys don't put out videos quite as often, so forget what I just said.
Done and done. Well, for me, I think just so long as I have good audio and the video flows well, I'll embrace whatever imperfections of the moment happen, you know. So I think, because that's, I think, what makes it more real. And just like Nick was saying, I think there's a lot of importance in having, like, layering the audio and having like natural sound and having all kinds of stuff that makes it more immersive. And that's something that I learned early on. But I'm a bit of a being a perfectionist is not a good thing. But when it comes to the video editing, like, I need to make sure that the video flows well. I'll oftentimes record the same thing from two different angles. I'll cut between them so it looks like I have two cameras, but I have just one camera there. And I mean, I'll go frame by frame to the point where, like, okay, my hand is in this position here. When I cut to the next cut, my hand is in the same position. Because, like, small things like that, I think a lot of people probably won't notice, but, like, that stuff bugs me a little bit. But it's easy enough to do that. Also, I will edit. If I come back from a trip and there's going to be 7 videos from that trip, I edit all 7 of them in sequence at the same time, basically. And then I don't post anything until all 7 of them are done. And that way I don't run into the situation, kind of like Nick was saying, where it's like, oh, I got to have this video done by this, particular day or whatever. I make sure that everything's all done in advance. I schedule them out, and then I can just sit back and drink tea and be covered by cats.
Yeah, and
which is a good life. Yeah.
I don't know if people have noticed this, but you're also always wearing the same shirt.
I know, right? It's the best little thing ever. First of all, it's a fantastic shirt. But also, yeah, exact same shirt. I've got like 3 of them. I've same pair of pants, same boots for the most part. It makes the video editing a lot easier, because if I have to grab a clip from like a few days later and throw it in there, I can do that. So
That's brilliant.
Same shirt. Yeah,
It's just
I've
so
had that
funny.
same shirt for a long time.
It's
Yeah.
just so funny because like I heard you talking about that, and when I do my podcast, I do it on video, and I can almost guarantee that when I do the intro and outro for this podcast, I will not be wearing this same shirt because it
Yeah.
might not be clean. So
Yeah. The consistency is key. It really is. It makes life a lot easier in that regard. Yeah.
what about for you, Adam?
My video editing is not very consistent. Some videos I put a lot more effort into than others. I don't spend a lot of time, and I think it shows. I mean, if you watch Nick's and Ben's videos, I mean, they're quite a bit more polished than mine. Lately I've just been using an Osmo, just because I'm moving around a lot, so I find that I don't have to take as much B-roll of different things, because at least I'm moving. I'm not just standing there static talking, a talking head for 30 minutes, whatever. Sometimes I feel like I should put way more effort into them, but I'm just not motivated to do so. It takes me longer to edit the video, the images, than it does the video. Usually I'll spend maybe 4 or 5 hours just editing a video, and that's it. I don't spend days and days doing it, because I'd rather be doing other stuff. I don't know, every now and then I'll get inspired and think, I should really put more effort into it, and then I get uninspired really quickly because I'd rather be out taking pictures.
That's interesting. So I wonder how everyone feels about this, but I actually really enjoy the video editing side of it. It's kind of a different creative outlet, and I think that's partly why I take so damn long doing it. And they say that it takes like an hour per minute of finished video for video editing. I'm at least double that, so it probably takes me a 20-minute video probably took me at least 40 hours to edit. Because it's insane nitpicking and watching it over and over and over and over and over, and then you reach that point where you've seen it so many times. It's like when you say a word too many times and it starts to sound weird, and you can't disconnect from it. And it's like, is this stupid? Actually, like I thought it was awesome in the first time I saw it, but now I'm like, this is insane. No one's gonna like this. So then I have to take a break from it and come back and watch it. But anyway, very long way to say I enjoy the editing side of it. But it sounds like, Adam, maybe you don't enjoy the editing side of it.
Sometimes I do. Probably the best video that I ever put out was actually for Fuji. I did a thing about their wide angle lens, the 20-35, and I had a friend of mine help me do some video, because it was about me in the field using this lens. And that video, I spent about a week on that, and I was really happy with the results. Like, videography is not my first skill set. I wasn't trained as a videographer. I enjoy it, but I don't enjoy it so much that I know all the nuances. My editing is very basic. I should actually spend more time with my younger brother. He runs a video production company, but unfortunately he lives out in Nova Scotia, so he's 4,000 kilometers away. I found it really nice to have someone else taking footage, but I just can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
And at one point there, I did put out a call for someone to come out with me, but it's just trying to time it. It's just too awkward, But sometimes short answer, sometimes I enjoy it. Sometimes I just want to get it over and done with and move on to the next project.
Yeah, I love the process when a video comes together. Usually when I come back from my trips, in my mind, it was just like this whirlwind trip. I'm like, I have no clue what just happened. I just know that I was there. I woke up at like 1 a.m. I'm back at my house by like almost like 9:30 in the morning, because I love these crazy early morning drives. If I come back, one of the first things I do is I take the memory cards for the video and I download them into my computer. Then I start going through and just kind of looking at some of the clips. I'll throw on the headphones, I'll listen to the audio, make sure it's good. But I do enjoy the process of putting the videos together, because just like what Nick was saying, the process of creating them, it allows me to relive the moment when I was in the field, which at that point feels like a weird dream. But also, since I've been taking stuff from the journal entries as well, I'll go through, I'll pull out the journal entry, I'll look at what I wrote, which to me when I was in the field just seemed like I was just blabbing random things. Who knows what I was saying. But then I start dropping a few rough clips in there, and I start looking at the journal entries. I'm like, oh wow, this feels far more profound than when I was actually in the field, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was taking pictures of mud, and here I am with like deeper thoughts about the process. So the way I can describe it is, it's a bit like you get like a brand new camera bag, and then you start like figuring out where everything's going to fit inside that camera bag. The camera's here, the lens here, put the filter, everything just kind of fits perfectly in there. It's very satisfying. And that to me is the process of creating the videos, where it's that sense of, cool, this is everything coming together. So I do enjoy that process more than I enjoy sometimes recording them in the field. So yeah, it can be fun.
For me, I do the same thing, except I do the same thing with my images. Now, obviously, if you're shooting film, you have to get them developed, right? But as soon as I get home, it's not the video I'm looking at, it's the images. And I get stuck right into them as soon as I get home. I don't have a huge backlog of unprocessed images from years ago. I don't have any. I mean, as soon as I get home, I just want to look at those images, and I start playing around with them as soon as I get home. So I guess it's kind of the same, except I'm doing it with the photography and not the video,
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually that brings up an interesting point, which is I usually have the videos edited before I've seen the images.
Oh, crazy.
So I have no clue how things turn out. And so that's why at some point I'll have the video editing where everything is going great. And then at the end there's a voiceover. Yeah, that didn't work out so good, because I had no clue when I was editing it. So it's just a unique part of the process.
There's no image.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
Narrator,
funny.
it was blank,
Yeah, we're like, I left the shutter open far too long. Whoops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to another question that I had for each of you, because earlier on we talked about being in the same space. We're all landscape photographers, but I think the three of you have a slightly different audience that you've carved out in terms of kind of who follows you. I'm sure there's a lot of overlap if you had a Venn diagram, but I'm curious to hear you each speak a little bit about kind of how much thought you've put into who your audience is, what you want that audience to do with you in terms of engaging with you. I know, Ben, you have a different, probably out of the three of you have a very different business model than Adam or Nick. And so kind of talk us through your audience curation and kind of how that links into your business model. And maybe Adam, you could go first.
My business model, I don't really have a business model. I've just been winging it for the last 30 years. My audience are very dedicated, and I'm really grateful to them. They tend to be the same people that comment. And I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that don't comment, and they've been following me for however long it is now I've been on YouTube. And some of those people are from before YouTube, when I was photographing for the gardening magazines. They used to get the gardening magazines. So I remember my friend Alistair Ben and I, we tried to figure out how many people you would actually need to follow you on a regular basis to actually make a living out of photography. And we came to the number, roughly 1,000 people that you would need to continually support your endeavors, whatever. So I tried to keep my audience happy by producing similar stuff over and over again. But of course, you want to change it up a bit now and then, because otherwise it might just get a bit dull. Like lately, I tried to delve a little bit into some other different types of processing. The first video didn't go over so well. I'm not really sure why. But I'd really like to delve into other forms of photography rather than just landscape photography. And it's funny how we've kind of put all nature photography into all these different divisions now. It used to be just nature photography. So nature photography encompassed wildlife, close-ups, you name it, anything to do with the outdoors. But now we have all these different compartments where people tend to follow, the grand landscape or the macro, and then the wildlife photography. I'd like to do a little bit more of everything, because it's all nature photography, and it's all about, at the end of the day, for me, it's all about being outside and just enjoying nature. So it's trying to find that balance between the people that already follow you, obviously, because most of my work tends to be landscape type-ish photography, but trying to transition over to other types of photography, even architectural photography. I mean, I really enjoy photographing old buildings and stuff like that as well, but I just haven't done enough of it, and it's trying to transition people into that as well. So I don't know, hopefully in the next year or so I'll start doing other realms of photography, and hopefully my audience will follow me through on that, or maybe I'll gain some new followers, who knows.
And what Adam's saying, there's a lot of truth to that, because I think the longer you do something, you kind of get pigeonholed into like this certain niche, which in my case I'm happy with, because that's all I want to do really. But I can see how in some situations it's kind of like, you know, you're known for one particular thing, but the moment you do something else, people are like, yeah, that's not what I'm following you for, and people might not like that or whatever. But I'm consistent to a fault, so I have no desire to to go down any other avenues. I'm pretty happy with where I am, but I think I'm probably fairly unusual in that sense, and also it's probably a little bit reinforced by there's just lots of things I can't take pictures of with a piece of furniture.
I was going to say, large format photography of birds in flight sounds really hard.
That would be very difficult. Even my selfie game could require some.
Have you ever thought about using a slightly smaller format, like 4x5, or just curious?
Get out.
I can't.
Leave.
I can't. Just kidding.
That'd just be shock the world, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You know, for a while I had a 6x17. I had a 4x5. I found I could use the 8x10 for pretty much everything. It's just less to carry, less film to keep up with.
True.
And everything else for that. But if at some point I have to give up the 8x10 for whatever reason, yeah, I mean, I'll go to a digital, probably a medium format, something, I don't know. But yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what would happen at that point, because, you know, I'm known for taking pictures of, here's a rock, here is a sickly looking tree, you know, things of that sort. So, and I don't know what I don't know what would happen at that point, but thankfully it's not really on the horizon. But as far as like the audience, I don't know, I just kind of do what I want to do, and I'm glad that people enjoy coming along for the ride. And I think my whole thing with the videos is that I don't, as I said earlier, I don't really get into technical things. I generally don't tell people what to do, like for like the tips and tricks and stuff. I don't offer any advice. I'm very horrible in that regard. I think it's because looking back at past videos I did where I offered some sort of advice, I look back at those videos, I'm like, that was horrible advice. How dare me, you know? So I just go around the whole thing, and my whole thing is I'll just show what I'm doing, show the results. That's kind of, it is what it is. And I think that has, you know, attracted some degree of a long-term audience, which is good. But I honestly don't put too much thought into it. Nothing, just like what Adam was saying, I have no master plan. I just kind of have stumbled through things in the dark and found some things that work and just kind of stick with it. Mm-hmm. So that's been my approach, which I don't recommend to anyone else, because it probably will just lead you off a cliff. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, I don't give much thought to who I'm trying to appeal to personally, because I kind of figure I'd rather just make what I want to make, and whoever enjoys that, cool. I'm fine with that. I will say a few things on that. One, I've found probably the audience that I have attracted are quite a few people where the desert is kind of novel to them. So they live in an area where these, you know, Bakersfield, which is a dump in California, is like, whoa, that's like the American desert. So like I do tend to attract that side of it, which is actually one of the, I hate to use the word blessings, but it's one of the blessings of being a YouTuber, is other people tell you cool things about your life that you didn't know are cool. Like, like, oh man, Orange County's awesome, or like the desert out there is so cool. And I'm like, this shitbox? Like, what are you talking? And then you kind of start to look around, you're like, oh yeah, this actually is really cool. So that's one cool thing. One of my favorite things to hear is people will sometimes email me saying like, Yeah, my wife and I watch your videos all the time, and my wife's not even a photographer, and she loves them. Like, when people tell me that they're not a photographer and they really enjoyed the video, that's like my favorite thing to hear, because I don't want to speak only to photographers or aspiring photographers or anything like that. And then probably my one last thought on it is, every once in a while I put a video out and my subscriber count drops. And at first I'm like, God damn it. But then I catch myself and I'm like, good. That's the dead wood burning off. Like, I don't want dilettantes following my channel. I want people that really like what I'm doing. And if I put out what I like and they're like, oh, that's not why I'm following you, bye. See ya. I'm not interested. I want people that like what I'm doing, even if I'm not doing it very frequently, or it's not what the majority of people want on YouTube. I want like a tightly condensed audience that is very into what I'm doing, and might result in less money from YouTube because there's fewer views, but I think it actually results in a more dedicated customer base, because if you release a zine or a book or prints or anything like that, they actually buy stuff. Like, they really do want to support you, or whether you're doing Patreon or contributions or something, like, they will actually put their money where their mouth is, because it's like me going to see a Tarantino movie. He does one every 5 to 7 years, but man, I'm going to be first in line to see it when he does release one, because I know it's going to be good, and I know it's what I like, so I hope the audience is kind of more in that direction.
I love that.
Good points.
Yeah. Kind of a follow-up question to that, because I've had these conversations with a few friends of mine, especially about you, Ben, not to put you on the spot, but like, you talk a lot on your podcast about, kind of, lack of a better term, you kind of have this laissez-faire approach, like, I'm just doing my thing, and if people like it, that's cool. But you started YouTube so long ago, and you built up this really awesome audience back before anyone else was doing it, and like, now, in order to gain that growth to where you've gotten to, which, to be fair, is like pretty good, but maybe like not astronomical, right? But it's a nice audience, a nice solid audience. But like, if you were to try to do what you've done today, it would be almost impossible. And so I'd be curious, like, if you were to start today, would you change your approach at all in terms of establishing your audience? And maybe you could answer first.
Where I've been able to take things through the years was a result of certain doors being opened at certain times. If I were to do exactly what I'm doing, but starting fresh today, there'd probably be 3 people and maybe a cat watching, and I don't think it would gain any sort of traction, because there's so much, and so it's sometimes people ask for like advice of like, how do I start doing the YouTube or whatever, and sometimes the answer is, I mean, who knows? I mean, the doors that are open now are much different than were open then. So I'm extremely stubborn. As I've said in the past, my spirit animal is a donkey. And as a result, if I was starting fresh, I would do exactly what I'm doing right now, but I would gain 0 traction whatsoever. And I don't know, maybe I just give up. But yeah, I have no advice, and I also know that what I'm doing right now is just simply a result of back in 2009 things are different than where they are now.
I refuse to say your spirit animal is a donkey and not an ass.
Maybe it's just like a little donkey. Maybe it's a burrito.
Okay, it's a burrito. Yeah. Little donkey burrito.
Yeah.
Adam or Nick, do you have any thoughts on that perspective?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd do anything different. I mean, it's hard to say, because I'm kind of stuck in my ways that I do things now. I have been watching a lot of other landscape photography channels, especially from smaller channels. And the one thing that I find is that that a lot of the channels tend to be middle-aged white guys, same age as me, and they're all doing the same thing. And I think with this kind of starting up a YouTube channel now, I think you'd have to come up with something slightly different. I don't know what that would be, but just walking around aimlessly, taking pictures and talking for 10 minutes or whatever, I just don't know if that's enough. I think you have to offer something that's different than what everybody else is already offering, because there's just so many of us out there, and it's like I said at the beginning, it's such a small niche. I mean, even Tom's channel with his 500,000 subscribers or whatever is pretty small in the YouTube world. And there's a lot of nature photographers that want to do YouTube. I think you also have to go into it with the right mindset, in that you're not doing this to make money. You're just doing it because you really enjoy it. And don't fake it. Just if you really enjoy it, then you should do it for sure. Even if you only have 10 subscribers, I mean, why not? If you really enjoy it, then, and eventually people will see that and they will follow. And but I do think it would be quite hard to do the way I'm doing it. I mean, even my channel, since COVID was actually really good for YouTube, because I had a lot of people watching but my viewers has really dropped off. But it doesn't bother me. I'll just keep plodding along doing what I'm doing. I guess if it got to the point where I only have one person and their cat watching, then I might consider giving it up.
Yeah. I feel very lucky in two regards for when I started YouTube. First off, it was far enough ago that there wasn't much competition, so it was quite easy to get your videos seen if you're doing something that is kind of common now but wasn't back then. So I'm the first to admit, if I started a YouTube channel today, I don't think anyone would know who I am. So I was very lucky to start it 11 years ago. I'm also lucky I wasn't able to start it earlier in my photography progression, because I see some, I look at my old work when I was 2, 3, 4 years into photography. If I had that recorded on video for the end of time, I would never leave my house. I'd be so embarrassed. Like what my opinions were back then, what my thought process was back then, what my photos looked like back then, what I valued back then. I'm so grateful it is not recorded for all of eternity on YouTube, and no one had to witness those early struggles. And I kind of feel for young photographers now, I think there's almost like you got a YouTube channel, right? Like you kind of have to document your photography journey. It's like, don't get 5-10 years into it before you start sharing your thought process and stuff with people that publicly. But I also agree with Adam, this is a very niche corner of YouTube. So it can only get so big. It can only be so successful. If you want to be a successful YouTuber, buy a used car, take it out to the desert, and figure out how to explode it with TNT or something. Something's going to be a good thumbnail. Like, do something that has broad appeal. If you want to document your photography experience for people, don't do it to make money, because you probably won't. And especially in the beginning, make it something you're proud of and something you want to work on, and then the audience will find you.
I love what you just said there, Nick, about playing the long game. I know, Ben, that's something you talk a lot about on your podcast as well, and it's something I see a lot of up-and-coming photographers make. I personally think it's a mistake that people are so eager to get what they perceive as kind of fame and fortune, and they put out sloppy work, and I think we've all been there, but I really encourage people to really develop yourself as much as you can and get feedback as often as you can from people you trust, and then start to worry about what you're going to do with your photography. I think a lot of people are putting the cart before the horse. Yeah,
there's quite a few YouTubers that are pretty obviously they haven't been doing it for very long, and either they hate their job and they want to become a professional photographer, which I don't recommend to anybody.
Me neither, by the way.
You might be better to become a plumber or electrician. I mean, the only thing that personally that I had going for me when I started was that I'd been doing photography for a long, long time. So I at that time I thought I had something to offer, and that was just my experience, and it worked for me. But as far as me being animated or a character to follow. I don't really have that going for me. So it was more just my experience. I mean, some people like Simon Detremont have done very well because he's geared towards the beginner photographers or people that just want quick information. There's no fancy music or 10-minute introductions or anything like that. It gets straight to the point, tells you what you want, and it's kind of like me going on YouTube and looking for a video of how to fix my tap or whatever. It's kind of the same thing. And that kind of format, I guess, would work for some people, but that's only if you really enjoy doing that kind of thing. If you don't enjoy it, then why would you do it? Anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I hate to jump in here, but there's something I wanted to bring up just because we all nodded our heads in agreement, like not recommending people become photographers. I want to comment on that a little bit because I could see people that aren't, or that are aspiring to be professional photographers hearing that and be like, bunch of cynical assholes kind of talking about how bad it is. But I was photographing a shopping center once in Sacramento, a dumpy shopping center because they always are. This was for my client, not for YouTube or anything. It's like 100 degrees out. It was miserable. I'm out on tarmac all day taking these shoots. Really suck is what I'm getting at. And I had my tripod set up and I was standing up on a step stool, which I do sometimes to get a higher vantage point. And some guy walking by, just going through the parking lot, he was staring at me and like kind of furrowed brow. And then he called out to me. He's like, "Damn, man, you got a cool ass job." And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm standing out here roasting in the heat, shooting a Rubio's in Sacramento. Like, this is not a cool ass job. But then I kind of started sinking like, well, it's obviously all relative. And I've been out of the corporate world so long. I never really was in the corporate world per se, but I've been out of it so long. It's easy to forget how crappy the office politics and TPS reports and all that other BS everyone's got to deal with that we don't have to deal with. It's easy to kind of say it sucks. But what I will say, and I think what we were all nodding our heads along with, is it's not the activity of it that sucks or that would make us not recommend it. For me, it's that turning photography into a revenue stream really complicates your relationship with photography. Because this thing that was your passion and that brings you nothing but joy gets turned into this thing where it's like, yeah, it's still that, but you got to make it work for you. And that means you have to do some things with it that you might not want to do, or some things with it that taint the pure, unbridled passion you have for it. It's one of the reasons I really admire Ben's business model, because it seems like he's found a very good way to pursue it exactly how he wants to pursue it and not have to do a ton of stuff you don't want to do, but still find a way to make it work for you, because becoming a professional photographer, whatever that means in 2024, because I don't even know what that means anymore, you have to do quite a bit of things that aren't photography, but things that also can sometimes make you actively not enjoy photography. So it can be difficult to find ways to keep the passion there so that it's not all work and no play.
And I think also, especially for nature photography, it's more of a lifestyle choice than a profession. It was kind of like the rock climbing. When I was teaching rock climbing, it was pretty obvious I wasn't going to make a fortune out of teaching rock climbing, but it was more of a choice of lifestyle. That's what I wanted to do. And it's the same with photography. I mean, that's not to say that you can make a really good living, but you'll have to work really hard at it. And I think if people go in, I guess we're all kind of nodding our heads when I said I'd rather be a plumber or an electrician, is that it's not the greatest way. If you want to make money, then photography is probably not the way to go. Like, you have to go into it for the right reasons. I have no regrets being a photographer, but money has never been a huge motivator for me. But at the same time, you have to realize that you need to make money to survive, right? So there's that fine balance between the two. And how much money you want to make depends on how much effort you put into it. And even then, there's no guarantees that that will work in your favor. And also, at the end of the day, making a living out of photography has absolutely nothing to do with how skilled you are as a photographer.
Yeah.
You could be the best photographer in the world, but if you don't put any effort into the business side of it, you'll just be another starving artist. So, I mean, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. People aren't going to discover you suddenly and buy your shit. It just doesn't work that way, which is really sad, but it's true.
Even if you do get discovered, by the way, like I always want to point out to people with nature photography, there's a reason all of the nature photographers everybody knows also lead workshops. It's because selling the photos doesn't pay the bills if you sell any.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually that gets into something in terms of like, well, what Nick was saying about, you have to go out of your way if you're going to make it not simply become a job and make it not simply become work. And that's something where I have worked hard on, and that's also why I have decided not to do workshops, because for me that would take, I'm sure there are some good aspects of doing workshops, but I personally just don't think it fits within my talent set. I look at people that do workshops and I'm like, I can never do that. That's just, I have to be like a people person like 24/7, and I'm like, I can't do that. I'm gonna have people following me. I'm like, go away, which is
that doesn't work very well. Then that does not work.
It doesn't. I could be the teacher of like, everyone find a rock, name the rock, and you're gonna spend about 30 minutes with that rock. It's gonna be your buddy now. Take one picture of the rock, no more.
Then they ask you what is the f-stop, and then you collapse into a pile.
Yeah. That's when I pulled, I guess, my beard out at that point. But I just know that is not in my wheelhouse. So I have never gone down that road. But for some people that have that talent set, that's great. But if I had made doing workshops part of my photography business, then it would become work for me. So that's why I have turned that off. But when it comes to earning a income as a photographer, I personally, I mean, even though I don't necessarily recommend it for other people, because it is hard to do, and realistically it is difficult to do, but also for me personally, I know that I'm uniquely unqualified for almost every other job on the planet, so I have to kind of make it work. And I think probably a lot of landscape photographers probably fall somewhere in that category in terms of, I can make this work, I'll make it work. But also the goal is to make it not be work. I feel like it's like a Dr. Seuss thing going on there with fish of various colors. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Ben, I mean, kind of building on what I said earlier about like how you were an early adopter and you've kind of curated this audience, which I feel like is not really feasible anymore. You also have the privilege of being married to another income earner, which is not something that everyone has has that going for them as well. So like I feel like if you weren't married to someone making money and you didn't have that early adoption strategy, or I guess just being at the right place at the right time, you probably would be working at a camera store or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it wouldn't be feasible, and that's definitely another aspect of it where we can, in the past with the photography stuff, the income kind of came in spikes and then it would just be dead for a while. There'd be another little spike. It was nothing to be able to depend on. And thankfully things are fairly consistent now. But yeah, my wife works a full-time job. She is a programmer. She does make more than me, which is fantastic. I love it. It's not like she's like rolling in it, but but it does give that sense of stability, and she has the health benefits through her work. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do this. So that is definitely another very significant factor in being able to pursue this, which can be a little bit feast or famine at times. And I think part of, if you do want to pursue photography as a career, finding a way to have enough passive income from things where it really just evens out those spikes of income and keeps it consistent, so that you don't have that stress of, oh, how am I going to feed the 42 cats this week, because they're hungry little kittens. But But yeah. So I think there's a lot of that thinking that goes into it that just comes with time as far as working with everything. But yeah, logistically, it would be difficult for most people to pursue photography and to make a living at it, which I think is one of the reasons why all of us are kind of like, yeah, it's not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
So yeah.
And I didn't mean to discount the work you put into your photography, Ben. I think, like Nick was saying, I think we're all a little bit envious of like kind of what you've discovered and what you've been able to carve out for yourself, and that model is not something most people probably can realistically accomplish very easily. So
yeah, it's a difficult thing, but also I don't work as hard as my wife by a long shot. So I ride my bike a lot and I take pictures of sickly trees.
Man of leisure.
So this is my life. Yeah. You guys are lucky I'm not wearing spandex right now. I was thinking about it.
Well, I knew spandex was going to come up. Jeez.
It always does.
Well, I feel like we've covered everything except for my final question, which we can keep short. But how do you define success for yourself? And maybe I'll start with you, Adam.
Oh, God, can't you start with someone else? How can you define success? Wow. I mean, that's a tough one. For me, success comes from just being happy with my lot. Even though people call me Uncle Grumpy for whatever reason, I'm pretty content with my life. I have absolutely nothing to complain about. I mean, I complain about politics and all the other stuff that goes on, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm a pretty lucky guy to live in Canada. I live on an island. I'm relatively isolated from people, so that's good. I have a great partner. Things are going really great right now, so I think in my book that would define me as being successful. I don't know. My needs are pretty low. I don't have a lot of demands on my life, so yeah, I'm pretty lucky.
Perfect. What about you, Ben?
I think it really comes down to just doing what I enjoy and making a living from it, and also having a rather low stress life. I think the combination of those two things is pretty good. So yeah, that's what I'd say for that.
Simple. And for you, Nick?
I'd say the bill's getting paid on time. It's a big aspect of it. I know that's kind of a literal definition of success, but I mean, the stress that comes from feeling like you're always running out of money is a terrible way to go through life. So I feel like, feeling like the bill's getting paid, I can breathe a little bit. I think that's a good measure of success. As a photographer, not necessarily a professional photographer, but a photographer in general, I think it would be feeling like, you're taking better pictures every year, or pictures that you're more proud of every year, or at least that you're not less proud of, I suppose. Just feeling like you're growing, I think is probably a good measure of success as a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, my definition is pretty similar to all yours. It's like being able to get paid to take pictures and enjoy being in nature, and however I can make that work is fine with me. And I took the advice of my colleague Richard Burnaby. He told me, don't do photography full time unless you're willing to give up everything but your family and your friends. And so far that's been pretty accurate. But you got to be willing to make that sacrifice, So,
yeah.
Well, fellas, this has been really awesome. I am incredibly thankful for each of one of you taking the time out of your busy schedules. Except for you, Ben. You said you don't have a busy schedule, and
very not busy.
And no one feels sorry for you for that. But
it's got nothing on the docket today. This is it.
That's right.
I was going to ride my bike a little bit.
You still have time.
It's a tough life.
You still have time.
Yeah, I might go for a run and pet the cat for a bit.
That's nice. I think I'm gonna go try to edit 2 podcasts. So yeah, my day has just begun. But again, thank you guys so much. I really love this conversation, and everyone, please check out their YouTube channels, and of course their amazing photography. 3 of my favorite photographers right here. So thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you to Adam, Ben, and Nick for the wonderful conversation this week. I really had a great time, and I hope that listeners take the time to visit your channels to see the amazing work that you're doing on YouTube. If you find value in these conversations, please consider supporting the podcast on Patreon. I've actually seen my Patreon support dwindle over the last year, and I'd really appreciate your help in keeping the show going week after week. We also have over 230 bonus episodes available to you on Patreon, so what are you waiting for? I'd really appreciate your support. Just visit patreon.com/fstopandlisten or visit the link in the show notes to support the show. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.